Well, the Detroit Tigers salvage a win on Sunday, but it was on the back of a really, really rough performance on Saturday, and they end up losing the series over the weekend. We got a ton to discuss all today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Sunday, July 24th, 2023. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Be sure to check out the Tigers broadcast on the SiriusXM app, by the way. Very easy. You just go to the SiriusXM app. You just search Detroit Tigers, and next thing you know, you're listening to the home broadcast, and everybody knows we got a great booth up there. So be sure to check that out. The Tigers drop a series over the weekend to the San Diego Padres, lose Friday and Saturday, then salvage a win on Sunday. 3-1 victory on Sunday. A lose by 11 on Saturday. They get the doors blown off them at home in front of a huge crowd, one of the bigger crowds of the year. Super embarrassing, to be honest with you. And then they barely lose in a one-run ball game on Friday. So, when I was doing prep for this show, back when I first got this gig and I first took over as host of this show, for Monday episodes, I would do like each game. I'd do like, Friday would be segment 1, Saturday would be segment 2, Sunday would be segment 3. And then I kind of wanted to veer away from that because I found that I was just talking in general anyway. And it was weird for me to be like, this person had a rough performance on Friday. And then, look, they did really well Saturday and Sunday. So like, who cares? Like, that was old news at that point. So I wanted to kind of stay away from that and just do weekend recaps at a whole. This is by far the most difficult time I've had since going to like this new format that we've been doing for like over a year now. Doing that and like staying away from the game by game recap, because like the only time I felt this way, because each game was so substantially different from each other. Right on Friday, you go down 5-0, you claw your way back, you make it close late. On Saturday, you get embarrassed in one of the most pathetic team performances of the entire season. And then on Sunday, you, behind a fantastic performance from Alex Faedo, you win like you were in command the entire game and won, even though you only won by 2 runs, you won pretty comfortably. So it was just like that. I found a way to, I think within my prep, like I found a way to navigate through it and not end up doing just like a game by game recap. But this was the first time like I really struggled. I was like, hang on, kind of just want to do like here's Friday, here's Saturday, here's Sunday. But let's start in chronological order. So Kevin McGonigal signed over the weekend, and a lot of people were really worried about that. I was not. That's why we didn't really talk about that whole saga on the show. McGonigal, by the way, the Tigers' compensation round pick in the MLB draft has officially signed, so that's great news. Awesome. Don't get me wrong. I think very highly of him as a prospect, but I was never really worried about him not signing. Like, that's a premier draft slot. Like that is that's high in the draft, right? Like that's a top 40 pick. And so I just couldn't fathom that this front office just had no conversation with him or his agent and didn't have like a conversation going into the draft about like, if you fall to us, this is the kind of money that we're going to give you. Would this be enough to kind of stray you away from Auburn? There was just, I don't know. I didn't think there was even in the realm of possibility for him not to sign. So we never talked about it on here. I never really like freaked out about it. Like it really felt like a lot of other people did. So good to see he signed. I believe we're at 18 of 21 players that have signed in a very prep heavy class. So to the people that, on draft night, were kind of a little bit cautious about the signability of this draft class, it's looking good now. I know of one high schooler in like our 18th round pick, 17th, 18th round pick. That is probably going to go to school. But outside of that, everybody else is still either on the table or signed. So we'll kind of do a full recap of that once the deadline for signing has passed, and we can kind of just do a full, we know who's signed and who hasn't. So let's get into this weekend's game. So let's start with the starting pitching. Get it? We can go chronological. Let's just do Reese Olson. His final line on Friday, I mean, it's not like the prettiest thing in the world. 5 innings, 7 hits, 5 earned runs, 2 walks, 5 strikeouts, 2 home runs against. Even the outs were loud. I mean, he was giving up some hard contact. That being said, Reese Olson, that slider is going to play. Like, it really is. And I'm still really excited about the pitcher that he could possibly become because of how effective that breaking ball is. But the biggest thing for me for Reese Olson, there's a lot of hype around him right now. He looked really solid in his first 2 starts. Everybody's like really, really excited about him. And I am too, absolutely. But I need to see an effective major league fastball. And it's so weird to me because it's 96 with tail. Like it's 96 with movement, but he just for anything cannot get strikes on it. He cannot get called strikes or whiffs on it whatsoever. And it's frustrating to me. I'm sure it's frustrating to him too, just because he doesn't have a good established third pitch to kind of like cover up the fact that he doesn't have a major league fastball at the moment. So until that happens, I'm going to be like cautiously optimistic about his future of being a like starting pitcher. I still have reservations about him becoming a bullpen arm long term, and that's not like a negative thing to say. Everybody needs relievers too. The starters are that's a very small group of pitchers that become major league starters, but like that's the only thing really holding him back to me. Like all those reservations I have would go away instantly if he just proved to have a consistent fastball at the major league level. And right now he just doesn't. He only threw 39% of his 4-seam fastballs 4 strikes to start off. So less than half of them were even in the strike zone, which is already kind of a question mark there. Only 1 whiff the entire outing. And within those 39% of his 4-seam fastballs that were actually in the strike zone, 100% Z contact percentage for the San Diego Padres against the 4-seamer. Z contact percentage is simply just the percentage of the percentage of contact that was made on that pitch that was in the strike zone. Z is for zone. So that means that the Padres did not swing and miss at a single fastball that was in the strike zone. They made contact with literally every single one that actually was in the zone, and that was less than half of them. That is a wildly ineffective pitch over an outing. Wildly. So that's the biggest thing for me. The average exit velocity, goodness, on it was almost 100 miles an hour. Like they were just smoking it. So yeah, that from a start to start basis, that's just what I'm looking for from Olson. And that's his big like next step in development for me, because the slider was fantastic. 7 whiffs, 7 called strikes, a 40% CSW percentage, called strikes plus whiffs percentage on the slider in the outing is beautiful. That's a masterclass. So that's that. There you go. That's really where I stand with him. Third pitch still kind of needed, but most importantly, need some consistent fastball effectiveness. Matt Manning, do we even really talk about Matt Manning's start? He barely had one. We'll talk about that, I promise you, in depth when we talk about the bullpen and the Mason Englert thing in segment 2. But yeah, I mean, like he didn't really have one. If you want a quick Matt Manning rundown, the first 2 batters were really bad. He didn't throw a single strike. Then he recovered really nicely, and that was his outing. It was like 1 inning of shutout ball with 2 walks. Cool stuff. We will talk about that for sure. I know everybody wants to. So let's get into Alex Faedo to round out the starting pitching performances, and then we will get into the bullpen talk and the decisions that were made on Saturday. But first, I got to tell you all about our friends over at Sleeper. If you want the chance to win more money with less picks, head to Sleeper, where you can win up to 100 times your money on just 2 or more fantasy baseball picks. Vlad's on a heater. He's a super fun guy to kind of hone in on during these daily fantasy games that Sleeper has. It's so awesome. It's so fun. And when you got a guy like that that's on a heater, it's really easy to go in there and go, okay, you play the more or less game. And obviously Ohtani's a really fun one. Trade deadline looming, about to start a series against the Tigers as well. So maybe that gives you more incentive to think that he's going to do well. But it's really awesome. So if you want to win 100 times your money on daily fantasy baseball, head to Sleeper because they are offering up to a 100 times payout for an up to 8-pick contest. Choose as many as 8 players that you like, pick more or less on your favorite stats like home runs, strikeouts, hits, and more, and get your picks right so you can win big. Use promo code LOCKEDON and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 30 states. Check out Sleeper today. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2 of Locked On Tigers. I appreciate y'all for tuning in, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. I appreciate you all greatly. We'll be back tomorrow recapping I believe we have a 1-game makeup set against the Giants today on Monday. I think that's real. Then we have a 3-game set against the Angels afterwards as well. But I think we're about to play 1 game against the Giants. We'll talk about that later. We got to talk about the week as a whole is going to be very noteworthy and full of storylines. So we're going to talk about that a little bit at the end. But let's get back into this game. Alex Faedo was brilliant. And his final line was 6 innings, 1 hit, no runs, 4 walks, 2 strikeouts, I believe, off the top of my head. He was great. And, I also still think that Faedo long-term is going to end up being a reliever. But the reason I think that is because of inconsistency's sake, not because he doesn't have the ability to get anybody out when he's on, because he does. But it's there are way too many question marks and way too many just like ups and downs and peaks and valleys of for inconsistency's sake from start to start with him. And so to me, that screams reliever. Like, hey, this dude can get anybody out. But it's just a toss-up of which like version of him you're going to get on pretty much a batter-to-batter basis once you get past like the 3rd inning. So we've seen so many times like when the lineup turns over, people have more success over him. And obviously in this outing, again, 6 innings of shutout ball against the Padres offense, we'll take it. But yeah, definitely something that and look, for the rest of the season, I don't mind giving him an opportunity. Like, we got to see what we have in dudes. If you want to, hey, there's a slimmer of hope, go for it. Like I especially once we trade a couple of our starters, I don't have anyone I'd rather. Like, sure, give him starting pitching opportunities, see if he can prove me wrong. That's just where I stand right now. That's all. So all for the opportunity, and he looks great in this one. That slider is so good when it's on. Genuinely, one of the better pitches. Like, could be in the entire organization when it's located well and when it's really on. Okay, let's talk about the bullpen then. Goodness gracious. So Saturday, they lose 14-3. And in that outing, Mason Englert, I feel so bad for the kid. Mason Englert goes 2 1/3, 10 hits in 2 1/3 out of the bullpen. 9 earned runs, 1 walk, 1 strikeout, and 1 home run against. His ERA balloons up to 5.46. So it's obviously really unfortunate for him. Like I said, I genuinely do feel really bad for him that they just kind of left him out there to dry and asked him to just wear it. I think that was pretty unfair. We'll start with the decision to not bring Manning out there. Optically, it definitely doesn't look great that the Padres left out a dude that was in his major league debut after the rain delay, and he like looked fine after as well. I think did he get a quality start? Did he end up going 6 innings? Had the 1 3-run inning, and besides that was pretty fine. It was on cruise control at one point. Matt Manning didn't go. Oh, he ended up pitching 2 innings, not 1, but that didn't go back out there after the delay. In a vacuum, I do not have an issue with Manning not going back out there per se. Like, that was an hour and a half rain delay. If Manning's had a ton of injury problems over his career, I understand that, again, like the optics of it are bad because of what the Padres did and whatnot. But like, this dude was literally hurt like a month ago. In a vacuum, I do not have as big of an issue with that as I do the management of Mason Englert. That's where my issue lies. Not as much with not being Manning per se. But Mason Englert clearly did not have it. Clearly. I'm not sure I've ever seen an outing out of the bullpen where someone, every single pitch was thighs or higher. Everything was in the top of the zone. Everything was belt high. And we've talked about Englert for a while. At the beginning of the season, he had some good outings, some good like long relief outings, and people got really excited about him. And we've been talking about all year. He is another guy that does not have a major league fastball currently, like whatsoever. And so he has a plus changeup, I think, when it's on. But like that's really it. And if you're not going to have a fastball out of the bullpen, you need to develop that. Like he needs to if he wants to be a major league pitcher. And so we'll see what they do development wise with him and what ends up happening. But I think leaving him out there was just a ridiculous decision. And I'm the innings guy, right? I'm the one that people get mad at all the time. You should see the things I read. I'm the innings guy. That's me. That's my label. I'm the guy that every single time a bullpen decision is made that the general public doesn't like, or that the fan base is upset with, or somebody's left out too long and people complain about it. Every single time I step in front of this coaching staff and I step in front of this manager and I go, put the X on me instead, because I understand that innings have to be managed and that you need to get innings out of people. And we had a ton of injuries at one point, and it was really unfair to this pitching staff during that time. And I thought it was managed really well, genuinely. That's me, okay? But I thought this was awful. I could not have disagreed with this decision more. A few things. One, this was a clear indication that you did not give a flying, flapping about winning this baseball game. Could not have cared less about it. You had a lead when Englert entered the game. A 3-run lead at that. And when it went south, you didn't care. Left him out there to dry. And again, I'm the innings defender. But why on earth are we prioritizing innings right now over winning the game we're playing in which we have a lead against a better baseball team? I thought it was absolutely preposterous. I could not have disagreed with it more. I have said that AJ Hinch has managed this bullpen really well throughout this season. This is easily, it's not even remotely close, the biggest bullpen managerial decision I have disagreed with in this dude's entire tenure as the manager of the Detroit Tigers. You will never convince me any rhyme or reason or any possible angle to justify what happened on Saturday with Mason Englert. He didn't have it. Okay? They're starting to cut the lead. Now it's a tie game. Now we're losing by a run, right? There was a 3-run homer, right? Now we're losing 4-3. Now we're losing 5-3. Now it's 7-3. And it just didn't matter. I'm glad we got our 2 innings out of him, dog. I'm really glad we got our 2 innings out of him. It's a problem you deal with later. And look, if you taxed your entire pen, if you went Cisnero there, I know he ended up giving up a homer later in the game anyway, but like if you go Cisnero there and you do the bullpen game, which by the way, you have been brilliant at all season. If you go bullpen game there and do a bunch of 1-inning relievers, guess what? Now you're heading into Sunday with a chance to win the series. And if you go to Sunday and then you have a situation where, oh my gosh, this is a close game. Worst case scenario happens. It's a close game. We're whatever. It's a tie game. We're only up 1. We're down 1. Whatever scenario you want to cook up. And none of our relievers we can use. We've used them all on Friday or Saturday. They're all out of use. And now we're hosed. Well, then you send Englert out there on Sunday. And whatever. He loses you the game. He wins you the game. Whatever happens, happens. But to just throw game 2 when you lost game 1 made Sunday like not matter. You've gained no ground in the division, by the way. You're 7 games back. You were 5.5 back at the All-Star break. So to I don't know. I know that a lot of people have a different opinion on what was going to happen at the trade deadline. We'll kind of talk about that after the break here. But you've lost a game and a half in the division now. You were winning this game at one point. It's not like you were down 5-0 and sent Englert out there to get blasted and you just needed innings. You were winning. And you did not manage the bullpen to win the game. You managed the bullpen to relieve some innings. I thought that was a big disservice to the team, the fan base that showed up, and honestly, maybe most importantly, to Mason Englert. All right, let's keep the ball rolling. Got a lot still to talk about. We will do that right after this. All right, everybody. Welcome back here. Third and final segment, Locked On Tigers. I appreciate y'all for tuning in. Be sure to check out the Tigers on the Sirius XM app. Like I said at the beginning of the show, you can just tune into any broadcast. You just search Detroit Tigers on the Sirius XM app, and the home broadcast comes up. So from anywhere you are, which is super cool. Okay. So we talked about Englert. Also, the reason why people are like, why is this dude still on the roster? He's a Rule 5 pick. So if he was optioned, he would go back to Texas, and then Texas would be able to keep him in the minors. And if they also decided they didn't want him, then we could put him in our minors. But I think they're going to ride it out for the season. And I think he's going to be in Toledo next year. So in order for him to get to Toledo next year, he needs to remain on the roster for the rest of this year. And I think that is going to happen. So after the game, we can talk really quickly. Roster move. We'll kind of flop that in offense on our itinerary here. Alex Faedo was called up, and Brennan White was sent down. I really like Brennan White. He still needs to work on slider command. That's like the biggest thing right now. A lot of his sliders are catching way too much of the plate. So still really believe in the kid. He's got nasty stuff, but definitely needs to work on the command in a big way. And I don't expect him to be down there for long. I fully expect after the trade deadline for him to come back up. So a week and a half. I expect once the trade deadline happens and we trade away some pieces for him to just get the call right back up. But sometime, few games, week and a half down in Toledo to work on some command issues. Apparently that's all you need if you're Nick Maytown as well. So let's talk about the offense then, right? So the offense in this series, it certainly wasn't like incredible. 4 runs, 3 runs, 3 runs. It's not great. But they did attack some mistakes on Musgrove on Sunday, which was nice to see. Spencer Torkelson, I want to talk about. He, in the last 21 games, has an OPS of over 900. That's really good. So nice to see that. He's got 8 walks in there. Has a lot of extra base hits in there. The slugging percentage is like creeping up to 600 in that time span. Obviously not on the season, but it's like since June 20th, or I want to say, or maybe it's June 27th. Maybe it's a little earlier. So yeah, good to see the power surge. I mean, the home runs, he's got like 6 homers in the last 3 weeks. So most of his homers coming lately. That's always good to see. Could have back-to-back 5 home run months, I believe. That's always nice. So yeah, it's nice to see him slowly kind of take these steps forward, even though it's not the immediate, just like flip of the switch. Look, he's like an incredible 900 OPS guy, and he might never reach 900 OPS. I don't know. That's pretty subjective at this point. But for right now, I will gladly take some steps in the right direction, and that's what he's showing us. So yeah, it's like an average over 250 and a slug of almost 600 in the last 3 weeks of baseball. So we'll take it. Good to see. I mean, he was all over Musgrove, to be honest with you. The walk, there was a couple of hanging pitches like right down the middle that he just fouled off instead of crushed. But I don't think he had a single whiff against Musgrove. I'm pretty sure he took every ball and made contact with every strike for like the entire outing. So good to see that. It's a really darn good pitcher over there with a lot of spin as well on his breaking balls. We got to talk about Javi, and like I've really been contradicting myself because at the beginning of last week I said we weren't going to talk about Javi every single day, but he just keeps getting himself at like the front page of the news with something ridiculous like every single game it feels like. And I don't want to talk about it every day, but like we have to. So like obviously he has the air, he goes 0 for 3 on Sunday, and like I've said this a billion times in the last 7 days alone, and like a trillion times this season. Like it's all about just hitting fastballs. It's not the approach. He's had the same approach his entire career. He was a good player at one point with the same approach. He actually even striking out more than he does now. But he's been awful against fastballs. I think he has 1 home run on the year against fastballs, and none of them are pulled. He's late on all of them. He fouls off all of them. So like some people were like giving me a hard time on Friday and Saturday, and we're like, oh look, it's like Javi's on a heater. He just needed to get benched. Look, like he's got a few hits, all breaking balls, or he was late on a fastball for one of them, I think. Until he consistently starts hitting fastballs hard to the pull side, I could give a flying, flapping, you know what, about any hot streak he's on, because I know it's not sustainable. Again, unless he starts hitting fastballs again. Then we're back on the like, oh, wow, we might actually be getting a decent version of Javi Baez that we paid for. But until that happens, it's not happening. That's all you need to look for. Don't worry about him swinging in the other batter's box. Don't worry about his approach at the plate or that he's first pitch swinging. None of that matters. You literally just need to pay attention to how he does against fastballs. And until he's doing that consistently, the rest could not mean less. I feel very strongly about this. Trying to think, I mean, Riley Green's incredible. Continues batting average around 300. He's like clearly not 100%, by the way. I don't know the extent. I would like to think that the Tigers, as an organization, would not like put someone who is at real risk of injury like out there and play them. And he's like still productive and like good because he's Riley Green. He's incredible. But I mean, like it's pretty clearly like not at 100% and still has some way to go until he is. So we'll keep an eye on that. But just the next time Riley Green's getting benched against a lefty, just don't freak out. Just be like, oh yeah, like they're going to bench him like once a week, once every 5 days, maybe even, because he's like pretty clearly still feeling the injury a little bit. I mean, like, I don't know. It was a pretty like, I feel like the offense wasn't the storyline of this weekend. I don't have too many like big stories to take from the offense. Jake Rogers is getting his batting average higher. I think he's creeping around 210 now. A lot of people used to get really mad at me when I would say like I didn't really care about Jake Rogers, like 180 batting average because he was walking a lot and hitting homers. It was a huge plus defender. So like I feel like we can all kind of agree a little bit more on like how valuable he truly has been. He legitimately has been one of the most valuable catchers in baseball if you use FWAR, Fangraph's calculation of WAR. So like, yeah, I like Jake Rogers a lot, and it's nice to see him accommodate those who might not have been on the Jake Rogers train earlier in the year by hitting a few more singles here and there. I don't really have anything else to say offensively. I mean, 4-3-3 against the Padres team. The other thing about this weekend, one of the things that bothered me was a lot of people were just like, especially on Saturday mostly, were just like, oh, well, I guess against for Reese Olson's sake, Friday as well. Like, oh, well, this is a really talented lineup. Like, this was bound to happen. I promise you, if you said that to the face of a diehard Padres fan, they would slap you. This has been one of the most underperforming teams, maybe the most disappointing team in baseball. Like the most disappointing team in the entire game of baseball. They're selling at the deadline. They're well under 500. You're only a few games back from the Padres record-wise, even after this series. They're like 5 under. Maybe 4 under now after the weekend. I don't know. Somewhere around there, though. They've been wildly disappointing. And they have their games. You can go back and look at their game log. They have their games where they put up 12. Quite a few of them. But they also consistently, at least once a series, if not twice a series, put up duds. Xander Bogaerts has been a pretty big disappointment in year one. Juan Soto is one of my favorite hitters ever, as someone who obviously loves walks. He has one of the highest walk rates in the history of baseball. I love him. Machado, been good, solid, but like, you know, given the extension and what he just got paid, probably expected a little bit more. And the rest of the lineup's been like pretty objectively a disappointment. So I just, it really bothered me hearing so many people just be like, oh, well, it's the Padres. Do you know what the Padres have done this year? I'm just, again, it just reverts back to the same thing we've said a million times on this show. I'm so tired of being every single game, every single team's get right game, man. It's so exhausting. Well, look how talented the Padres lineup is. Look how productive the Padres lineup has been. This offense has not graded out well this season. This has not been like one of the best offenses in baseball. They've been wildly disappointing. You dropped 2 of 3 at home. Okay, implications as far as the trade deadline goes. I know we're running to the end on time here. To me, I don't know if like nail in the coffin is the right word, just because like it's 7 games back. It's not 10 games back. The Twins won on Sunday. You're 7 games out. And again, at the All-Star break, you were 5.5 back. And I had said in like the trade pieces show, right? I had said, if you want to prove me wrong, if you want to get people on board with not going into sell mode, etc., you need to go on a massive heater. Like massive, right? You need to catapult yourself into the conversation of being a 500 ball club. Since the All-Star break, they are what? 6-4? 6-5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 wins. And 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 6-4 since the break. You have lost a game and a half on the division, despite being 6-4 since the All-Star break. They're selling. And I don't mean fire sale, everything must go, Torkelson and Green are out of here. We don't have any bats anybody wants. But like, I don't see the point of not trading Lorenzen and Erod at a minimum. And probably Cisnero if you want to get anything out of some bullpen pieces. The Foley and Lane conversation we've said a million times is different because they have a lot of team control left. But I think that this weekend really, there was still a lot of people that were on the fence. And again, I love optimism. I don't tell anyone how to be a fan. If you want to have all the optimism in the world and be like, no, we're still going to make a run, I love you. Please carry that torch, because it's not going to be me. And I think someone should always be the optimistic one, right? But I feel like for a lot of people, they either like switch sides completely to like, yeah, they're going to trade these guys. Or the people on the fence were just like, I'm leaning this way now. It wasn't as dramatic. If they got swept, it would have been as dramatic as like the Ottawa Senators back-to-back if you're a Red Wings fan, right? The Red Wings were kind of in the wild card hunt, then had a back-to-back right before the trade deadline, like days before the trade deadline against the Ottawa Senators. Lost by, I think it was like 13-2 or 3. If you combine the score of both games, got absolutely destroyed by Ottawa in both. And then the whole fan base was like, well, we're selling, not buying. There it is. And I don't think this was as dramatic as that because they did salvage a win on Sunday. But I mean, after Saturday, I think the writing was pretty much on the wall. So you have San Fran looking ahead to the rest of the week. You got San Fran. I think that's real. I'm pretty sure. I haven't heard too many other people talk about it. That like no one's really like, oh, let's on to San Francisco, like whatever. But I'm fairly sure that's a real thing. So I think it's a Monday 1 o'clock game. They play the Giants for a makeup game rain out earlier in the year. I think it was the series Maton hit the walk off. I think one of the games in that series got rained out. So I'm pretty sure that's that game. And then after that, you have a 3-game set against the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. That is going to be a weirdly intense series, I think. You have a lot of implications on the line in Anaheim. They are, I mean, their fan base, goodness, they're going back and forth every day about if they're buyers or sellers, right? And they have probably the most prized trade piece maybe in the history of sports. He's a rental, I guess, so maybe that's a little dramatic, but like they have the golden ticket. And they have some other pieces that if they go into sell mode, teams will call about some of these other pieces. And so that's going to be a really, really kind of like weirdly intense series for a July series against two teams that aren't in the playoff picture right now because the Angels are trying to be. And I don't know. Usually when these teams meet, it's kind of a decent series, I feel like. Not when I was younger, but like recently, I feel like they've been playing decent ball lately. That's 2 night games in a day game on Thursday. And then you go into the trade deadline this weekend with a 3-game set against the Miami Marlins, who have been terrible since the All-Star break, but are very much still in that wild card conversation as well. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every day. We'll be back tomorrow recapping, I'm pretty sure, a game against the San Francisco Giants. Yeah, I appreciate y'all for making us your first listen every day. Go check out Locked On MLB. Sully does a great job. I think that's all I got. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch y'all tomorrow, baby. Go Tigers.